Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you. So we are all human beings, and as you know, because of this, we are subject to illness, injury, aging, and death, and many other bad things. And this sets a limit to the quality and the length of a human life. There is only so much you can do to make a human being better off, just because of what it is to be human. Now, some people think that we could avoid these limitations of being human. In fact, they think we could become completely inorganic. We could stop being biological things at all. I think this picture is really quite meaningless. If you look on Google Images under transhumanism, you get silly things like this. So they hope, these people, the transhumanists, hope to liberate us from our human limitations by what they call uploading. Now, this term is quite misleading because we all know what uploading really is. You copy an electronic file, a document, say, or a photo. You copy it from your desktop computer to a central internet server. And then other people in other places can use that information to make their own copy of the document or the photo. But transhumanist uploading is quite different. The psychological information in your brain is read or scanned by some device like this, perhaps. And the information is converted into a digital format. And then the information is transferred to a computer. That's the bit that is like real uploading. But then, in this case, the information is not merely stored on the computer, like my letter of reference, for example, but rather the information is used to create a person in the computer, to create a person just like you, psychologically, that is, a person with your memories, your plans, your personality, and so on. This person, I've got some pictures from an old film that you might recognize. So this person in the computer is not made of flesh and blood, but is completely inorganic. And the thought is that just by using the information in your brain to program the computer in the right way, that will all by itself create a person, a thinking, conscious being with your mental properties. And the hope is not just that we can create beings psychologically like ourselves in computers, but rather that we ourselves could literally move from our human bodies to a computer, like this, okay? See? You like my special effects? And once you are in the computer, you won't need to worry about illness or injury or exhaustion or death or aging. If the computer that houses you is damaged, you can just move to another computer. Travel would be as easy as emailing. You won't need to take the train. We just send the information. All of those limitations of the human condition will be a thing of the past. Now, all these hopes are founded on an important assumption. The assumption is that advanced technology will make it possible to transfer a person from a human body to a computer. I will call this the uploading claim. And this is a very interesting claim. It presupposes three important principles. First of all, it presupposes that genuine artificial intelligence is possible, that it's possible for a computer to be conscious and intelligent, just like you are. This is another still from a famous film to do with artificial intelligence. Some of you might recognize it. The claim is that it is possible for a computer to think and be conscious in the way that we are. You might call this a computer person, a person who is literally in or on the computer, okay? That's the artificial intelligence assumption. Okay, that has to be true if we are to be uploaded into computers. Okay, here is a second assumption, that it is possible for a human person to move from a human body to a computer. Okay, so not only could there be a computer person, but you could become a computer person. The second assumption presupposes the first one, but does not follow from it. It may be that there could be a computer person, but you and I could never become one. Just as, by analogy, perhaps there could be a god. This is the Greek god Zeus. Perhaps there could be a god, a divine supernatural person, even though you and I could never become gods. And in the same way, it may be that there could be a computer person, even though you and I could never become a computer person. Okay, in this respect, uploading is like the resurrection of the dead. That is the claim that when we die, we continue existing in a conscious state in the next world. Okay, this is all very familiar, right? The doctrine of resurrection presupposes that there is a next world, a heaven or a hell, with people like ourselves. But the mere existence of such a place with people like ourselves would not make it possible for us to get there. That's a further claim. It must be possible for me to be dead and decaying in the grave, but at the same time, alive and conscious in the next world. And you might wonder how that's possible. How is it possible for you to be dead and burned or eaten by worms, but at the same time to be alive in the next world? That is a metaphysical obstacle to resurrection. Uploading faces a similar obstacle. We might ask, how could it be that I am dead and buried and being eaten by worms, but at the same time I am alive and conscious in a computer? You might think of uploading as life after death for the non-religious. The claim presupposes that there could be a person in a computer, that you and I could become a person in the computer, and also it presupposes that it will one day be technologically possible to do these things. It may be that it's metaphysically possible to upload a person, but it will always be impossible for human beings to do it. Okay? So all these things must be true if uploading is possible. And all three presuppositions are controversial. They're all controversial. I will just talk about the second one, the personal identity assumption, although that's the one that's of most interest to me. The others are controversial, but I won't talk about them. So this is the claim that it is possible for you to move from your body to a computer. How is that possible? Why suppose that we could become computer people? The answer that transhumanists give is that it follows from a certain view of personal identity. The question here is what it takes for a person to persist from one time to another. That is, to continue existing rather than cease to exist. What sort of thing is it possible for you to survive, and what sort of thing would bring your existence to an end? You could put it by asking, what determines which past or future being is you? And here is an illustration of this question. Suppose we have an old class photograph like this, and you point to a certain little boy or little girl, and you say, "That's me." And the philosopher might ask, well, what makes it the case that that little girl is you? Why are you not rather one of the other people in the picture? What is it about the way that you now relate to that little boy or that little girl that makes it the case that that person is you? Why are you not one of the other ones? What makes it the case that you existed at all back then as a child? So this is the question of personal identity over time. And one possible answer to this question, the answer that the transhumanists give, is that, well, you are that future being that inherits its mental features from you. That is, beliefs, memories, personality, preferences, and so on. And likewise, you are that past being whose mental features you have inherited in this way. You continue existing just as long as your mental life continues, roughly speaking. So if we ask, what makes you that little boy or that little girl? The answer is, you have inherited your present mental life or mental properties from that child. Perhaps you can remember sitting for the photo, or you can remember other things you did when you were that age. Your personality and sense of humor have developed from that little girl's or that little boy's personality and sense of humor, and so on. So there is a sort of psychological continuity between you and that child. And it's psychological continuity that makes it the case that you are the same person. Okay, so the thought is that, and in the uploading story, the person in the computer will be psychologically continuous with you. That's part of the story. We upload the information from your brain to the computer. The person in the computer has your memories, your personality, your sense of humor, and so on. And then, according to the psychological continuity view, that will make that person you. Okay, so the person in the computer is you for the same reason that the little child in the photo is you, because of psychological continuity. All right, so the personal identity assumption, that is the assumption that you could move to a computer, follows from the artificial intelligence assumption that there could be a person in the computer, together with the psychological continuity view. Now, I'm doubtful about the personal identity assumption and about the psychological continuity view, both of them. Here is a worry about the personal identity assumption. If you could be uploaded into one computer, there we go, then you could be uploaded into two computers. All we need to do is transfer the information from your brain to two computers rather than one. And the result would be two computer people, psychologically just like you. Now, the trouble is that if one of those computer people could be you, then both of them would be. They would both be you. But that is logically impossible. They could not both be you. That's because, well, if we suppose that you and the first computer person are one person, and you and the second computer person are one, then it follows that the first computer person and the second computer person must also be one. They must be the same person, right? If x is the same thing as y, and x is the same thing as z, then Y and Z must be the same thing. But they are not the same person. There are two people after the uploading, and not one. And you could not be two people. You cannot be two things that are distinct from each other. That is logically impossible. If you can't be both, then you can't be either. So the problem is, if you could move to one computer, you could move to two computers, you could become two people, and that is logically impossible. So the problem is, a person cannot move from a human body to a computer by double upload, so to speak, okay, because that's logically impossible. If it's not possible by double upload, then it's not possible by single upload either. So no amount of uploading can make a human person into a computer person. Here is another version of the same problem. Okay. In the usual uploading stories, the original person is somehow erased or destroyed in the uploading process. But that need not be the case. We could scan your brain without doing you any damage. It might be like having an X-ray for you. The uploading claim implies that this would move you to the computer. So you would be the person in the computer. The person in the computer would just be a copy of you. But if the person would be in the computer would be a copy of you in this case, then it's the same in the ordinary uploading story. So that's the branching problem. Here is a second worry for the uploading claim. The second problem is based on the thought there's a difference between an original object and a copy of that object. So here is the original Moscow State University building, which you all know. You can imagine that the Americans build a replica of the Moscow State University building in Las Vegas, perhaps. But of course, the building in Las Vegas would only be a copy. It would not be the original university building built in 1950. There's a difference between an original and a copy. And it's the same with a person. There's a difference between you and a copy of you. But the uploading claim threatens to erase this difference. Consider the great Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. Now, the artificial intelligence assumption implies that it is possible to make a psychological duplicate of Wittgenstein on a computer. If we had a scan of Wittgenstein's brain from the time when he was alive, then we could upload that information into a computer and use it to create a person psychologically just like Wittgenstein was when he was alive. So we could copy him to a computer. And if the personal identity assumption is true, also possible to upload Wittgenstein himself into a computer, just as we could upload you into a computer. If we had the information, we could resurrect Wittgenstein himself from his quiet grave in Cambridge. And there must be a difference between these two outcomes. There must be a difference between making a copy of Wittgenstein in the computer and moving Wittgenstein himself into a computer. Just as there's a difference between the original university building in Moscow and the American copy in Las Vegas. But now suppose that the British Wittgenstein Society get hold of a copy of the brain scan from Wittgenstein, and they propose to use this scan to upload it and make a psychological copy of Wittgenstein in their computers so that they can ask it lots of questions. They don't want the original Wittgenstein, they just want a copy of Wittgenstein because Wittgenstein has suffered enough already. But the Austrian Wittgenstein Society also have a copy of the scan, but they want to resurrect the real Wittgenstein. They want to put Wittgenstein himself, to upload Wittgenstein himself into a computer in order to attract foreign visitors. Okay, now the question is, what would the two societies have to do differently so that the Austrians got the original Wittgenstein and the British got a replica or a copy? It looks like there's nothing they could do differently. They will both use the same information from the brain scan, upload the information into a computer in the same way, and use it to create a person psychologically continuous with Wittgenstein. It looks like there will be no difference between bringing Wittgenstein himself back to life by uploading and creating a replica of Wittgenstein. And that seems to be absurd. That's like saying there's no difference between the original Moscow State University building and a copy of the building in Las Vegas. And it means that there would be no difference between uploading you into a computer and creating a mere copy of you in a computer. And that goes against the uploading claim. Remember, the uploading claim says not only can we make a copy of you in a computer, but we could put you in a computer. There has to be a difference between those two outcomes. So we've talked about the branching problem. This is the view that uploading you leads to a logical impossibility, that you might become two people. And the duplication problem, that it seems to imply that there's no difference between a person and the duplicate of that person. I think these are serious objections to the uploading claim, but I don't think they're very deep objections. I think they're actually problems. I don't think these are problems for uploading in particular. I think they are problems for the psychological continuity view. That is, they're problems for the view that what it takes for you to persist is psychological continuity. The view that what makes you a past or future being is psychological continuity. Okay, so here's a problem for the. I think this is the real problem with uploading. The uploading view implies that you could move from one place to another by a mere transfer of information. A person could be sent as a message by telegraph or as a text message. In the story Alice in Wonderland, this is a joke. The idea that you could be sent as a message by telegram or as a text message. But if uploading is possible, it's not a joke. It really is possible to send you as a text message, because all that moves from your body to the computer in uploading is information. And the information could be sent by telegraph or as a text message, or it could be written down on paper. And the idea that you could send a material thing as a message by telegraph, or as a text message, or written down on paper is absurd. Think about whether you could send a tree as a text message, or a brick. Could you upload a tree into a computer or send it as a text message? That's obviously impossible. You cannot upload a material thing like a tree or a brick into a computer. And you cannot send a brick or a tree as a text message. You cannot move a material thing just by transferring information. To move a material thing, you have to move some matter. If you want to send a load of bricks from Moscow to St. Petersburg, for example, you can't send a load of bricks as an email or a text message. You have to put them on a lorry and move some matter to St. Petersburg. But aren't we material things, just like bricks and trees? So if we are material things, then it's impossible for us to be uploaded into a computer. I will show you why, okay? It's clearly impossible. Well, you might think that if we are material things, we are living organisms, biological organisms. And obviously, you can't move an organism to a computer by scanning its brain and uploading the information from the scan. Scanning the animal's brain, it might damage the organism. It might leave the organism unharmed, but it's clear that the organism stays where it is here. It does not move to the computer. Or scanning the organism might damage it, or it might even completely destroy the organism. It might vaporize the organism. But in none of these cases does the organism move from here to here, right? Just as a brick would not move from here to here just by moving information. It doesn't matter what form the scan takes, the organism will stay behind. At most, we could create a psychological duplicate of the organism in the computer. Right? We could, so to speak, copy the organism to a computer, but we couldn't move the organism itself to a computer. So an organism cannot move from a human body to a computer by uploading. If we could move to a computer by uploading, then we are not organisms. Right? In that case, each of us has a property that no organism has, namely being uploadable into a computer. And if you have a property that no organism has, then you are not an organism. So if uploading is possible, then we cannot be organisms. And the same goes for any other material thing that you could be. You could not be a brain either. The scanning procedure could not remove your brain from your head and put it into the computer, or convert it into information and move it to the computer. The scanning process might leave the brain undamaged, or it might perhaps damage the brain in some way. It might even completely destroy the brain or vaporize it. But in none of these cases is the brain converted into information and moved to the computer. In each of these cases, the brain stays here. You cannot move the brain into the computer. If uploading is possible, then we cannot be brains, just as we cannot be organisms. It looks like you cannot move any material thing to a computer by uploading, because, again, to move a material thing, you have to move some matter. Just transferring information is not enough. So the challenge for uploading is this. If the uploading claim is true, then we cannot be material things. We cannot be things made of matter, like bricks or trees or dogs. We must then be immaterial things. But what sort of immaterial things could we be? That's very hard to say. Nobody would say that you could move an immaterial Cartesian soul into a computer by scanning and uploading, I don't think. So the challenge is to say, what sort of thing can think and act and eat and drink and talk and so on, but also move from a human organism to a computer by a mere transfer of information, or be sent as a text message. As far as I can see, there's nothing that can satisfy both requirements. And if there is no such thing as that, then uploading is metaphysically possible. Sorry, is metaphysically impossible. At any rate, those who think that uploading is possible need to explain what sort of thing it is that can be intelligent and conscious and can eat and drink, but could also be sent as a text message. Okay, I say good luck to them. Thank you very much.
Если бы у вас была возможность создать, например, 3 копии себя вы бы согласились на это, и вы бы до копирования вы бы знали о том, что ваши копии будут. Организовали бы вы семинар из ваших новых 3 копий и 4? Потому что вот файлы можно, например, где-то. Да, такой вопрос.
I'm not sure whether I would object to having copies made of me, though it might be rather awkward if there were some copies of me, because they would all want to live in my house. They would think that my partner was their partner. They would take all the money from my bank account. Perhaps it might be useful to have copies of me, especially if they were in a computer. Perhaps they could do my teaching for me, and I could go on holiday. Have I answered the question, or have I misunderstood?
Хотя мне кажется, что копии, они могли бы обладать каким-то запасом, своими телами они бы обладали, и, соответственно, ваш дом бы защитили от ваших копий, и им бы пришлось бы, наверное, вы бы выделили бы какие-то капиталы, если бы материально не было бы этих ограничений, если бы у них была бы возможность где-то жить, а вы бы не пустили их просто в ваш дом. Вы бы создали бы эти копии?
A very interesting question. Yes, I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, of course, I think it would be good if there were more people with my political views and my philosophical views, my taste in music, and so on. It would seem rather self-indulgent to make copies of, perhaps self-indulgent and narcissistic to copy myself in this way. It might set a bad example to lots of other people.
I was wondering, when I kept listening to the lecture, especially towards the end, I kept wondering that you could introduce the analogy that comes from the computer, that you have the hardware and you have the software, and you could copy the software. And in this case, you won't be able to ask, do I send you the original one, or is it the copy? There won't be any difference. So I think that kind of would answer your claim. And on the other hand, if you have the hardware, suppose it's a software for a robot, and the robot does construction work, and you can say, how can this informational thing do the construction work? And it can, because it uses the hardware to do it. Is my question clear?
Are you suggesting that the person is a sort of software?
I'm not sure I believe that, but I think it would be an objection to your claim.
Okay, good. Yes, thank you. So let me see if I can go back. So the uploading presupposes that there is something that satisfies these two conditions. Okay. It can eat, it can think and act, and it can move, be sent as a text message, or be uploaded into a computer. Okay, and of course, software is just information, a sort of computer program, and of course it can be sent as a text message and be uploaded. Yes, but I don't think a piece of software can think and act, because a piece of software does not change in the way that a thinking, acting being has to change, right? I mean, the Microsoft PowerPoint does not change when I use it. What changes it is something concrete in this particular computer. So you can move the software to the computer and create in the computer something, a physical object, well, perhaps, that can think. But I don't think anything in the computer that can think can be uploaded.
Не считаете ли вы, что личность – это не только сознание, личность человека, а весь организм человека? И что в дискуссии о загрузке путается копия и модель? Можно загрузить модель, но не копию.
I think saying that the person is, the consciousness is a confusion. Consciousness is a property like height, say, or weight, okay? And the person is the thing that has the property of being conscious. And I think the thing that has the property is an organism or some other material thing, physical object, though I have not argued for that view. That's perhaps controversial. You might say that you could upload a plan, so to speak, for building a person into a computer and use it to build a person there. That's okay. That is not to move the person to the computer. That would be like sending the plans for the Moscow State University building to Las Vegas and using them to build a replica of it there.
Вот из вышесказанного вы говорили, что пример с PowerPoint приводили, что PowerPoint это статичная система, которая не меняется, и личность переносит в компьютер, будет являться такой же статичной. То есть, по сути, вы сравниваете биологическую динамическую систему, которая способна перестраивать нейронные связи, оценивать опыт, корректировать свое мировосприятие и систему ценностей, и говорите, что это не то же самое, что статичная система компьютера. Но когда мы говорим о переносе сознания в компьютер, в машину, мы не подразумеваем презумпцию, что эта система может быть статична всегда, что она не может быть такой же динамической, как и биологическая система организма. И если бы у PowerPoint и у MacBook или других элементов наших гаджетов было бы свойство менять свои связи, так же, как связи меняются в мозге, то она была бы развивающейся и появлялись бы новые функции внутри. Он сам бы считал, какие функции более адекватные. Это было бы проявление его личности, его натуры. Что вы думаете по этому поводу?
Okay, a person that thinks and experiences has to be able to change. A piece of computer software like PowerPoint does not change in that way. Something electronic in the computer. I have not today objected to the view that something electronic in the computer might change and might be a person. That was the artificial intelligence assumption, which I don't believe actually, but I haven't talked about that today. But my point was simply that a person needs to be something concrete and changing and not something like a computer program, like Microsoft PowerPoint.
I'd like to ask you if we can imagine that we upload a person into a computer not by one step, but slowly and with ability to let the person some time to adapt to this computer system. For example, with the mechanical arms or the second body to let him move his another arm, and then he would or she would find himself as a technically adapted person, and then during some period we can switch off the one body, the one of his own bodies, but he would adapt it to this new body, and during this period of uploading, he would be awake of mind. So he would not be. Is it possible in this way to divide him into parts, for example, to the two different persons, because he would adopt by the new. He would adopt in awake position.
Is the suggestion that we replace your organic parts bit by bit with inorganic parts until all the organic parts have been replaced?
Yeah, and is it possible to divide person into two parts in this way if the person would be in mind awake? Because if the person, so we cannot make a copy of the person because he would feel himself and as he is, and it's impossible for he to feel himself and not to feel himself at the same time.
I'm not sure whether I've understood the question, but I haven't actually given. I mean, the first thought is a good one. I haven't given any objection today to the idea that you might become a computer person not by uploading, but rather by physical replacement of parts, gradually replacing your organic parts with inorganic parts. I think that would also imply that you were not an organism. That view is worrying for other reasons, but that view would not have the implication that you could be sent as a text message. Might perhaps be subject to some version of the branching problem. Perhaps that's what you were getting at. Yes, that's a good thought. Yes, but that wasn't the sort of view that that was my target today. I don't know whether any philosopher believes that you could become a computer person by part replacement, but not by uploading. I don't know.
I would like to try to apply the branching problem to animalism, if that's possible. So, my question consists in two parts. First, would you think it's possible to have a teleportation with destroying one human organism on one end, and then reconstructing an indistinguishable human organism on the other end, and that would certainly involve transferring some information. And the second part is, suppose on the creature on the other end would be reconstructed by the cells of the first organism that he left some time ago for that reconstruction.
So your question is whether we could take a scan of you and send it somewhere else and use it to gather up new matter?
Yes, but with destroying the first entity.
Yes, destroy the first entity. Well, I think when we destroy the first entity, we destroy you. Well, otherwise, you could be sent as a text message, because all that's sent from here to Mars is information. And I don't think you can send a brick or a tree as a text message just by sending information. So it's, I would say, the same as I said in the original case.
And the reconstructed animal on the other end would not be the same, even if it had the cells of the first, even if it was made of the cells of the first.
Well, I thought the cells of the original person were destroyed in the scanning.
Yes, but he left some for such a case. I don't know, I don't want to give disgusting details, like he left some hair to build the organism from that.
It looks like, I mean, if the scan destroys the animal, then that's the end of the animal. And the animal that you make at the destination is something new that did not exist before. Does that seem right to you?
That seems in harmony with your position.
Okay.
But not with my intuition, but that's my problem. Thank you.
Yes, I suppose the question is what sort, I mean, if you think you could survive, if you could travel by teletransportation, what sort of thing would you have to be? And I don't have any good answer to that question. It's quite hard.
У меня такой вопрос. Если мы по вашей лекции кирпич переносим переносим копию кирпича в другое место. А сейчас технологии так выросли, мы этот кирпич можем воссоздать на той стороне с помощью 3D принтера. Таким же образом, технологии медицинские сейчас мы сейчас создаем на 3D принтере и кости, и кое-какие органы. На сегодняшний момент возможна ли ситуация, когда мы сохраняем память, сознание, душу человека для того, чтобы когда человек физически еще работоспособен, но у него страдает когнитивка, можем ли, то есть компьютеры, нейронные сети, искусственный интеллект, возможно ли каким-то образом улучшить когнитивные способности человека, как бы помочь ему сохранить свою личность? Ну, предыдущие ораторы уже касались этих вопросов. Понятно, что каждая клетка, она имеет свою память, свою информацию. Но если технологии биохимические, биологические дойдут до того уровня, когда мы можем создать такую инструктуру, такое техническое задание, можем ли помочь человеку, который потерял память?
Is the thought that we might make a copy of your memories now, perhaps upload the information into a computer, and then perhaps after your brain has been damaged or something and you've lost those memories, we could take them from the computer and put them back into your brain?
Да, если мы в течение какого-то времени, ну где-то, если когнитивная память у нас где-то пропадает после 60, 70, 80, 90 и более старшего возраста, а мы искусственно начинаем делать видеофайлы, собирать память, сознание, фото, и через какое-то время мы можем каким-то образом удлинить личность человека, его в собственном физическом теле, но, возможно, с какими-то уже измененными как бы, кусочками различных органов, но ну, как-то так.
Yes, I don't think I have any objection to that. It's not, I don't mean to be, I'm not opposed to uploading altogether. I'm only arguing that it's not possible to upload ourselves into a computer. That we can upload information from ourselves into a computer, and that might have all sorts of uses.
I wanted to, actually, I don't know whether I'm broadening the discussion, but consider the idea of moving the brick. You say you have to move the brick. In order to move the brick, you move matter. So here's a speculative question followed by an attempt to provide another way of uploading. Actually, I agree with what you're saying here, but is the immediate question is the Christian resurrection of the body possible given this view that you move matter because, well, you know, the standard objections, I go out of existence and 10,000 years later, matter, but it's, I mean, would that be me? So that would provide, if we could naturalize this process, that would provide maybe a kind of method of taking me into the future, and then you can imagine filling this out. You vaporize me, and I think you won't agree with this, but you know, Descartes had the idea that God conserves physical objects in their existence. I mean, so to speak, he recreates them at every point. So you vaporize me, and then you recreate me a nanosecond later, my body, and so forth. Well, now we just drop out this whole physical process, but we store it in the computer. And the result is that I'm always ready to be recreated. So I guess it's a two-part question. Does this view of moving matter rule out resurrection of the body? I'm not defending resurrection of the body. And second, there's this speculative science fiction idea of making use of this kind of thing to get around your arguments.
That's a very hard question, but very interesting. Yes. You could argue that if resurrection is, well, you could argue that resurrection is possible like this, right? God simply takes a scan of you when you're about to die, or whenever the right moment is, and then uses that information to reconstruct you, so to speak, in the next world. And that would imply that you could be sent as a text message, I suppose, because it's only information that moves from the grave to the next world. And so I think that's impossible. So I think something more than information has to move to the next world for you to be resurrected. Perhaps it's an immaterial soul, or if there is no immaterial soul, then of course it's more difficult, a lot more difficult. Of course, it would be possible for God simply to snatch you away without anyone noticing and transport you through a continuous space-time path to the next world. This is Van Inwagen's story of how resurrection might work. That's perfectly possible.
Could God do this in a virtual way? He would just, so to speak, go through the motions of where I would be as he moves me behind the moon or whatever. Van Inwagen had us all stored. So he, in a continuous virtual way, he starts out with me in my prime, which is sadly gone, and moves me from virtually from point to point until we get behind the moon, and then he pops me back into existence. Or he keeps me stored up and then pops me into existence.
I don't think I've quite understood that, actually.
God moves me from here to behind the moon, and he does it by moving matter, or I guess Descartes would say sort of recreating matter. Well, why God's all powerful? Why should God have to go through the effort of actually moving matter? God, so to speak, just takes a snapshot of the process that she would follow if she actually did this, and stores that up. So we've got the actual course of the movement, and then God waits around for a couple of centuries and pop, I'm back into existence. I'm not sure that.
Yes, that's.
This is too speculative.
That has to do. Your question is about what is required for a concrete object to remain in existence, and in particular, on the view that on this Cartesian view that the world is always being recreated, which I don't really understand very well, I'm afraid. This is not a criticism, this is just my ignorance. And the idea that there might be gaps in this recreation seems to me to make it impossible, but I'm not very confident about that. We're not sure what to make of the Cartesian picture.
Хотел такой вопрос задать. Вот вы знакомы с работами вашего соотечественника Роджера Пенроуза? Он, основываясь на теореме Gödeля, выдвинул гипотезу, что человеческое сознание, оно в принципе невычислимо, то есть не может быть загружено как программа, как алгоритм, если мы говорим о машине Тьюринга, да, а загружено в машину, и поэтому как бы вот сам процесс сканирования сознания, переноса его в машину, он как бы под вопросом. И вытекающее из этого как бы следствие, да, то есть считаем ли мы, что человеческое сознание, да, как бы можно отделить от подсознания, отделить от физического носителя, то есть от нашего тела, да, то есть от гормональных процессов, которые в нем протекают, да, от всего того, что связано с познанием как бы мира через именно вот человеческое тело, через организм, который вот как бы вы предлагаете отделить от сознания. Будет ли обладать вот эта вот машина искусственная, да, рефлексией, творческими способностями, которые присущи человеку, свободой воли, да, потому что как бы машина, как мы понимаем, свободой воли не обладает, в существующей модели. Вот как быть с этим? Спасибо.
My memory of the Gödel and Penrose stuff is dim, and I don't remember the details. But this is a worry about the very possibility of artificial intelligence, and in particular, it's a worry about the thought that intelligence could be a computational process because of certain limitations of computational processes, And yes, I think that the worry is that perhaps human thought could not be computational because it doesn't have these limitations. But I'm afraid I can't give you any wise answer to that question beyond my competence, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
I have a small and maybe a bit foolish question, so I'm sorry if it appears to be so. So when you were speaking, when you were objecting the psychological continuity, you tried to do that, as I understood, in using the terms of psychological continuity. And in that point of view, when you say that a copy of your person was made, the copy of the original person was made, I do not quite get what makes the original personality original, and so what makes the copy in this case.
I'm not quite sure I've understood that there is the original person, you, for example. Okay, and we can do various things to you which produce someone in a computer who is psychologically similar to you, but the person in the computer can only be a sort of a copy of you because you will stay where you are. You cannot move to the computer any more than a brick can move to the computer. Okay, well, there's a difference between an original object and a copy. We could just as well ask, what makes that building over there, the original Moscow State University building, and not the one in Las Vegas? And I suppose the answer is that that's the one that was built by the Russians in 1950, and the one in Las Vegas was built by the Americans in 2020. Or at least that's the beginning of an answer, anyway. And so what makes that person you and this person in the computer someone else is that, well, that person was born by your mother, and this person was created just now by programming this computer.
Theoretically, if there were two computer persons, like the original one and a copy, as you said, is there a possibility that that they would develop in different ways, being in different contexts, like just you said, Wittgenstein in Austria and different computer personality in England, like, or maybe there could be a one common mind, a one common soul that absorbs the different experience in these different contexts of being, and like makes it still a one personality.
You might say that they have one personality in the sense that they have exactly similar personalities. I mean, if you have an identical twin, your parents might say that you and your twin have one personality. But of course they mean by that one personality type, there are still two independent thinking beings, two independent people.
And there could be two different persons from the one source. Maybe I...
Yes, they might be very similar people, and I suppose in my example, perhaps the two Wittgensteins, so to speak, would start out exactly the same, since they were made from the same plan, so to speak, and then they would diverge because the Austrians and the British would ask different questions, and so on. Yes, of course, but they would be independent beings. So when you say they might have the same soul, that that sounds like something metaphorical. That sounds like just a way of saying that they're very similar in some deep and important respect, which is true.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting to discuss possibilities of pathology. And so, excuse me my question. И более того, извините меня за то, что, может быть, вопрос последний, и рассматриваю я все несколько пессимистично. Но не то, что я рассматриваю, а то, что получается так, что последний вопрос я хочу несколько пессимистично сформулировать. А дело в том, что еще не 2000 лет назад, там, когда возникло христианство, а даже в случае египтян, многие-многие тысячи лет назад, они уже понимали, как бы, что душа переселяется, и поэтому фараонов надо было обеспечить всем необходимым в загробном мире. Христианство сделало большой прогресс, потому что они узнали, что не просто есть загробный мир, но есть ад и рай, уже называется, много чего знали. И есть еще, конечно, разные варианты индийской философии, где несколько, может быть, веселее, не просто можно в ад попасть, а там есть переселение душ, такой круговорот, что можно исправиться. И в чем вопрос? Вопрос в том, что в случае Декарта, когда были популярны и модные механические системы, там все строилось относить сознание на веревочках, по-простому сказать, и трубочках. А когда возникли компьютеры, мы рассуждаем о компьютерах по поводу перезагрузки душ. А в принципе ведь никакой разницы нет. Что веревочки, что компьютеры, все это сугубо мысленные эксперименты, и мы не можем ничего конкретного сказать, так оно или не так. Дело в том, что когда появились физика и химия, там закончились мысленные эксперименты, там возник реальный эксперимент с большими приборами. Приборы становятся все более и более дорогие, но они определяют реальность. А вопрос очень простой. Вот прошли вот такие тысячелетия, находимся мы в той же точке, что египтяне, потому как ежели мы рассуждаем и нет реального соприкосновения с реальностью, ну, с каким-то, то все это, что в чем прогресс?
Well, I think we know a lot more than the ancient people, the ancient Greeks or the ancient Egyptians knew. I mean, they knew a lot about astronomy, perhaps, but not very much about biology or physics or geology. And I think even in philosophy, even if we don't have answers to the hard questions, because philosophy is not very good at answering questions, I think we at least understand the questions better than we used to. And we have a lot more questions than there were in the time of Plato, for example.
Я просто думаю, что это самый важный и самый сложный вопрос, поэтому он занимать людей будет долго и долго.
A personal identity in the soul, perhaps, yes. Maybe it's. I think it's not always entirely clear. And I mean, I know nothing about Indian or Egyptian philosophy, but the discussions of the soul in Greek philosophy, for example, are often a bit unclear. It's not always clear what question they are asking. So if I've made any advance on Plato, perhaps it's by way of stating the question more clearly.